What percentage of resting cardiac output is filtering through the kidneys at any given moment? A. 15 to 20%. B. 10 to 15%. C. 20 to 25%. D. 5 to 10%. The answer is C. 20 to 25%. The kidneys receive more blood flow than any single organ, after the liver. 20 to 25% of the cardiac output of the heart goes to the kidneys for filtration, the liver receives closer to 28%. This is especially significant considering that the kidneys account for approximately 0.5% of total body weight, while the liver makes up closer to 3% of total body weight. What is the main functional unit of the kidney? A. The glomerulus. B. The loop of Henle. C. The Bowman's capsule. D. The nephron. The answer is D. The nephron. The basic functional unit of the kidney is the nephron. The nephron is composed of the glomerulus, which is encased in the Bowman's capsule, the proximal convoluted tubule, the loop of Henle, and distal convoluted tubule. %of glucose and amino acids are resorbed in what part of the nephron? A. The glomerulus. B. The loop of Henle. C. The distal tubule. D. The proximal tubule. The answer is D. The proximal tubule. 99% of glucose and amino acids are resorbed by the proximal tubule of the nephron. The loop of Henle and the distal tubule primarily resorb electrolytes and water, while the glomerulus is strictly for filtration and does not resorb solutes. A nurse notes an elevated plasma creatinine in a patient with mild kidney impairment. How will this generally be reflected in the glomerular filtration rate, GFR? A. The GFR will rise, then decrease. B. The GFR will be elevated. C. The GFR will not change. D. The GFR will be decreased. The answer is D. The GFR will be decreased. The GFR represents the rate at which blood is filtered through the glomeruli of the kidneys. Creatinine is a waste product of muscle metabolism. Healthy glomeruli are capable of filtering creatinine very effectively, wherein creatinine is excreted in the urine. Generally, an elevated serum creatinine will be accompanied by a decreased glomerular filtration rate and is strongly predictive of kidney dysfunction. A nurse is performing the urine dip on a patient with edema. The dipstick shows 1 plus protein. The patient is not sure if this is a normal finding or not. How should they be counseled? A. Protein in the urine is a healthy sign of proper excretion. B. Any urinary protein under 3 plus is considered normal. C. No amount of protein in the urine is normal. D. Any urinary protein under 2 plus is considered normal. The answer is C. No amount of protein in the urine is normal. No amount of protein in the urine is considered normal. The capillaries of the glomerulus are covered in a thin layer of cells called podocytes. These podocytes form a very tight filtration system that, when healthy, prevent all large molecules such as proteins from passing out of the glomerulus and into the Bowman's capsule, while allowing the passage of water, electrolytes, and smaller molecules such as glucose and amino acids. What effect does aldosterone have on sodium, water, and potassium in the kidney? A. Aldosterone decreases sodium and water resorption and increases potassium excretion in the kidney. B. Aldosterone increases sodium and water resorption and increases potassium excretion in the kidney. C. Aldosterone decreases sodium and water resorption and increases potassium excretion in the kidney. D. Aldosterone increases sodium and water resorption and decreases potassium excretion in the kidney. The answer is B. Aldosterone increases sodium and water resorption and increases potassium excretion in the kidney. Aldosterone is a mineralocorticoid hormone secreted by the adrenal cortex in response to aldosterone 2. An rise in plasma angiotensin levels will affect an elevation in blood volume, and hence blood pressure, by increasing the resorption of sodium and water in the kidney and increasing renal excretion of potassium. How much urine is produced by the average adult in 24 hours? A. 1,000 to 2,000 milliliters per day. B. 1,500 to 3,000 milliliters per day. C. 500 to 1,000 milliliters per day. D. 250 to 500 milliliters per day. The answer is A. 1,000 to 2,000 milliliters per day. Explanation: while normal function is possible with a urinary output as little as 500 milliliters per day, normal urinary output is between 1,000 to 2,000 milliliters per day, with 1,200 milliliters being average with adequate fluid intake. The absorption of nutrients and electrolytes from food occurs primarily in what digestive organ? A. The liver. B. The small intestine. C. The stomach. D. The large intestine. The answer is B. The small intestine. The majority of nutrients and electrolytes from food are absorbed in the small intestine. The remaining material passes into the large intestine for further transformation into stool. The liver and stomach are important sites of digestion and metabolism but are not the primary site of nutrient and electrolyte absorption. Which of the following is the main function of the large intestine? A. Resorption of water from stool. B. Passage of stool toward the rectum. C. Housing of intestinal flora colonies. D. All of these are correct. The answer is D. All of these are correct. The large intestine serves multiple functions. Large amounts of water are resorbed from stool via aquaporins in the large intestine mucosa, and the remaining matter is passed via a series of slow waves toward the rectum for excretion. In addition, the large intestine houses trillions of both beneficial and pathogenic intestinal bacteria and fungi. What is the name of the dilated portion of the rectum where stool is stored for elimination via the anus? A. The sigmoid colon. B. The rectal ampulla. C. The haustra coli. D. The anal canal. The answer is B. The rectal ampulla. Stool that has passed through the large intestine is stored in the rectal ampulla, a dilated portion of the rectum inferior to the sigmoid colon and superior to the anal canal. From there it can be passed into the anal canal and excreted via the anus. The haustra coli are segments or pouches formed along the length of the small intestine, demarcated by the smooth muscle of the tinea coli. Which of the following is a function of the kidney? A. Production of erythropoietin. B. Elimination of metabolic waste. C. Regulation of systemic pH. D. All of these are functions of the kidney. The answer is D. All of these are functions of the kidney. The kidneys serve a wide variety of functions. They eliminate waste, including nitrogenous wastes such as urea and ammonium. They regulate systemic pH via resorption of bicarbonate from urine and excretion of hydrogen ions, and regulate blood pressure via the renin-angiotensin system, also known as the RAAS. In addition, the interstitial cells of the kidney are responsible for production of erythropoietin, the hormone that stimulates production of red blood cells. The internal anal sphincter is dash, while the external anal sphincter is dash. A. Voluntary. Voluntary. B. Involuntary. Voluntary. C. Involuntary. Involuntary. D. Voluntary. Involuntary. The answer is B. Involuntary. Voluntary. The internal anal sphincter is a ring of involuntary smooth muscle that spends the majority of its time in a state of perpetual contraction. It relaxes only when the rectal ampulla is distended. Passage of stool is then controlled by the voluntary constriction of the external anal sphincter. What is the most common cause of anovulatory infertility? A. Polycystic ovarian syndrome, PCOS. B. Stress. C. Poor nutrition. D. Hypogonadism. The answer is A. Polycystic ovarian syndrome, PCOS. In polycystic ovarian syndrome, PCOS, luteinizing hormone, LH, levels are elevated, while follicle-stimulating hormone, FSH, levels are often low. Because FSH aromatizes androgens to estrogen, low FSH will cause androgens to increase. Low levels of FSH and high androgens keep the follicle from maturing and prevent ovulation. Hypogonadism is significantly more rare, and while extreme stress and poor nutrition may inhibit ovulation, in the United States PCOS is the leading cause of anovulation, failure to release an ovule from the ovary. Which of the following hormones is a precursor for both estrogen and testosterone? A. Dehydroepiandrosterone, DHEA. B. Aldosterone. C. Dihydrotestosterone. D. Estrone. The answer is A. Dehydroepiandrosterone, DHEA. DHEA, an endogenous steroid hormone that is a precursor for both estrogen and testosterone, is synthesized from pregnenolone in the gonads, the adrenal glands, and the brain. What is the most abundant circulating steroid hormone in humans? A. Aldosterone. B. Dehydroepiandrosterone, DHEA. C. Pregnenolone. D. Cortisol. The answer is B. Dehydroepiandrosterone, DHEA. The most abundant circulating steroid hormone in the human body is dehydroepiandrosterone, DHEA. DHEA is a precursor to several important sex hormones including testosterone and estrogen. It also functions as a neuroactive steroid. Which of the following hormones is secreted by the corpus luteum in order to prepare the endometrium for implantation of a fertilized ovum? A. Estrogen. B. Luteinizing hormone. C. Pregnenolone. D. Progesterone. The answer is D. Progesterone. The hormone that is secreted by the corpus luteum in order to prepare the endometrium for implantation of a fertilized ovum is progesterone. Progesterone prevents the constriction of blood vessels to the endometrium, which in turn prevents the shedding of the endometrial lining, menses. It also alters the endometrium, converting it to its secretory phase in preparation for implantation. Which of the following is a normal value of follicle-stimulating hormone, FSH, for a menstruating adult female? A. 16.5 mAu per milliliter. B. 120.0 mAu per milliliter. C. 25.8 mAu per milliliter. D. 4.6 mAu per milliliter. The answer is A. 16.5 mAu per milliliter. Normal FSH values for a menstruating adult female are 4.7 to 21.5 mAu per milliliter. A FSH of 0 to 4 mAu per milliliter would be considered normal in a premenarchal female, while normal FSH after menopause can range from 25.8 to 134.8 mAu per milliliter. What is the function of follicle-stimulating hormone in a menstruating woman? A. It stimulates follicles of the uterus in preparation for implantation. B. It stimulates the maturation of follicles in the ovary. C. It stimulates the formation of the corpus luteum. D. It triggers the rupture and release of the mature egg from the follicle. The answer is B. It stimulates the maturation of follicles in the ovary. In a menstruating woman, follicle-stimulating hormone stimulates the maturation of follicles in the ovary. Rupture of the mature follicle and formation of the corpus luteum are both stimulated by luteinizing hormone, LH. The uterus itself does not contain follicles. Which of the following is a normal follicle-stimulating hormone, FSH level in an adult male. A. 23.4 milli per milliliter. B. 0.6 milli per milliliter. C. 18.8 milli per milliliter. D. 5.0 milli per milliliter. The answer is D. 5.0 milli per milliliter. In an adult male, normal FSH can range from 1.5 to 12.4 milli per milliliter. It may be slightly lower in children. Follicle-stimulating hormone is released from the anterior pituitary gland. Its target is the testes. Which of the following is a function of follicle-stimulating hormone, FSH, in an adult male? A. It stimulates primary spermatocytes to undergo meiosis. B. It triggers the initiation of spermatogenesis. C. It stimulates the Sertoli cells of the testes to produce androgen-binding protein. D. All of these. The answer is D. All of these. In a healthy adult male, follicle-stimulating hormone stimulates the Sertoli cells of the testes to produce androgen-binding protein, it stimulates primary spermatocytes to undergo meiosis, and triggers the initiation of spermatogenesis. Which of the following is not a function of luteinizing hormone, LH, in a menstruating female? A. It stimulates the maturation of follicles within the ovary. B. It triggers the release of the mature egg during ovulation. C. It stimulates the production of estrogen by the ovary. D. It triggers the development of the corpus luteum. The answer is A. It stimulates the maturation of follicles within the ovary. Luteinizing hormone stimulates the production of estrogen by the ovary, triggers the release of the mature egg during ovulation, and then stimulates the ruptured follicle to develop into the corpus luteum, the structure responsible for providing progesterone to the endometrium in preparation for implantation, if a pregnancy were to occur. Which of the following is a normal value for luteinizing hormone, LH, in an adult female experiencing normal menstrual cycles? A. 25.4 milli L. B. 1.5 milli L. C. 76.3 milli L. D. All of these. The answer is D. All of these. In a menstruating female, LH values can vary widely during the menstrual cycle. It is its highest at the peak of the menstrual cycle 8.7 to 76.3 milli and lowest during the luteal phase of the menstrual cycle milli-IU, L. Which of the following is a normal value for luteinizing hormone, LH, in an adult male? A. 0.2 milli-IU, L. B. 14.5 milli-IU, L. C. 11.0 milli-IU, L. D. 26.7 milli-IU, L. The answer is C. 11.0 milli-IU, L. Normal LH values for an adult male range from 1.8 to 12.0 milli-IU, L. These can be slightly lower in prepubescent males. Adult levels above 12.0 milli-IU, L can be seen in certain conditions of gonadal dysfunction, such as hypogonadism. What is the function of luteinizing hormone, LH, in an adult male? A. It triggers the conversion of testosterone into dihydrotestosterone. B. It triggers the production of testosterone by the Leydig cells in the testes. C. It triggers sperm production in the seminiferous tubules. D. It triggers the production of testosterone by the Sertoli cells of the testes. The answer is B. It triggers the production of testosterone by the Leydig cells in the testes. In an adult male, luteinizing hormone triggers the production of testosterone by the Leydig, interstitial, cells in the testes. Testosterone is converted to DHT, dihydrotestosterone, by the enzyme 5-alpha reductase. Sperm production and maturation is triggered by follicle-stimulating hormone, FSH, rather than LH in adult males. Which of the following is the most biologically active form of estrogen? A. Estriol. B. Progesterone. C. Estradiol. D. Estrone. The answer is C. Estradiol. The most prevalent and biologically active estrogen in an adult female is estradiol, E2. Estrone, E1, estradiol, E2, and estriol, E3, are three endogenously produced estrogens. Estradiol, E2, is produced by the dominant ovarian follicle during the monthly menstrual cycle and is the most potent natural estrogen. Estrone, E1, is the dominant form of estrogen during menopause. It is produced in small quantities by the ovary and the adrenal glands, and is principally derived by the peripheral conversion of androstenedione in adipose tissue. Estradiol is more prevalent in premenopausal women who are not pregnant, while estriol and estrol are both only elevated during pregnancy. Progesterone is not a form of estrogen, but rather a distinct progestogen reproductive hormone. What is the most prevalent form of circulating estrogen in a postmenopausal female? A. Estradiol. B. Estrone. C. Estrel. D. Estrale. The answer is B. Estrone. After menopause, the most predominant form of circulating estrogen is estrone, E1. Estrone, E1, estradiol, E2, and estriol, E3, are three endogenously produced estrogens. Estradiol, E2, is produced by the dominant ovarian follicle during the monthly menstrual cycle and is the most potent natural estrogen. Estrone, E1, is the dominant form of estrogen during menopause. It is produced in small quantities by the ovary and the adrenal glands, and is principally derived by the peripheral conversion of androstenedione in adipose tissue. Estradiol is more prevalent in premenopausal women who are not pregnant, while estriol and estrol are both only elevated during pregnancy. What form of estrogen is only present in pregnant females? A. Estrone, E1. B. Estrol, E4. C. Estriol, E3. D. Estradiol, E2. The answer is B. Estrol, E4. The only form of estrogen that is exclusively present in pregnant women is estrol, E4. Estriol is produced in quantities that are notable only during pregnancy. Estrol is produced at very high levels in the fetal liver, and it has been suggested that this estrogen may have a protective effect in the fetus by insulating it from the maternal estrogens. What enzyme is responsible for the conversion of androgens into estrogen? A. Amylase. B. Aromatase. C. Protease. D. 5-alpha reductase. The answer is B. Aromatase. The conversion of androgens into estrogen is performed by aromatase, also known as estrogen synthetase or estrogen synthase. 5-alpha reductase is responsible for the conversion of testosterone to dihydrotestosterone. Amylase is a salivary enzyme that breaks down starches during mastication, and protease is a digestive enzyme that aids in the breakdown of proteins. Which cells in the male reproductive tract produce testosterone? A. Spermatogenic cells. B. Leydig cells. C. Wolffian cells. D. Sertoli cells. The answer is B. Leydig cells. Leydig cells, located in the testes adjacent to the seminiferous tubules, secrete testosterone in response to luteinizing hormone, LH. Sertoli cells are also adjacent to the seminiferous tubules. They play a role in stimulating spermatogenesis in spermatogenic cells. Wolffian cells are part of the fetal male reproductive tract and do not produce testosterone. Which of the following structures are formed from the embryological Wolffian ducts? A. The seminal vesicles. B. The epididymis. C. The vas deferens. D. All of these are correct. The answer is D. All of these are correct. The Wolffian ducts are fetal urogenital structures that develop into the seminal vesicles, the vas deferens, and the epididymis. They also form parts of the bladder wall. Which of the following is not an androgen? A. Dihydroepiandrosterone, DHEA. B. 2-hydroxyestrone. C. Androstenedione. D. Dihydrotestosterone. The answer is B. 2-hydroxyestrone. All of the hormones listed, and testosterone, are androgens except 2-hydroxyestrone, which is a metabolite of estrone, a form of estrogen. Androstenedione is produced by all of the following tissues except dash. A. The ovaries. B. The adrenal cortex. C. The testes. D. The adrenal medulla. The answer is D. The adrenal medulla. Androstenedione is produced by the ovaries, the testes, and the adrenal cortex. The adrenal medulla primarily secretes epinephrine and norepinephrine. Which of the following is a normal dihydroepiandrosterone (DHEA) level in an adult female under the age of 50? A. 31 microg (dl). B. 6 microg (dl). C. 240 microg (dl). D. 398 microg (dl). The answer is C. 240 microg (dl). Normal DHEA levels in an adult female under the age of 50 range from 32 to 395 microg (dl). DHEA levels are higher in younger women and decline as women approach menopause. Which of the following is a normal dihydroepiandrosterone (DHEA) level in an adult male under the age of 50? A. 59 mcg (dl). B. 450 mcg (dl). C. 386 mcg (dl). D. 94 mcg (dl). The answer is C. 386 microg, dl. The normal DHEA levels in an adult male under the age of 50 can range from 95 to 441 microg, dl. They are highest in early adulthood and decline with age. Which of the following is not a function of progesterone during pregnancy? A. Increases the contractility of the uterus. B. Decreases maternal immune response to the fetus. C. Breast maturation and preparation for lactation. D. Inhibits lactation during pregnancy. The answer is C. Breast maturation and preparation for lactation. Progesterone serves many functions in pregnancy. It prepares the endometrial lining for implantation of the embryo, it increases the contractility of the uterus, it inhibits lactation during pregnancy, and it is thought to reduce maternal immune response to the developing fetus. Breast enlargement and maturation in preparation for lactation is facilitated by estrogen, rather than progesterone. Which of the following proteins initiates male sexual development in utero? A. Masculinization factor. B. Testis determining factor. C. Testosterone sensitizing protein. D. Male determining protein. The answer is B. Testis determining factor. Testis determining factor, also known as sex-determining region Y, SRY, protein, is a sex-determining gene found exclusively on the Y chromosome in humans. Its transcription triggers the development of male sexual characteristics in the developing fetus. The Sertoli cells of the testes secrete all of the following except A. Estradiol. B. Androgen-binding protein. C. Anti-Mullerian hormone. D. All of these are secreted by the Sertoli cells. The answer is D. All of these are secreted by the Sertoli cells. The Sertoli cells of the testes are responsible for the secretion of many substances, including anti-Mullerian hormone, androgen-binding protein, glial cell line-derived neurotrophic factor, and estradiol. Which of the following is the term used to describe the post-ejaculatory transformation of sperm via enzymes in the uterus and seminal fluid? A. Spermatozoal maturation. B. Capacitation. C. Decapitation. D. Penultimation. The answer is B. Capacitation. The process by which post-ejaculatory sperm is rendered fully mature and capable of fertilization of an ovum is called capacitation. This is where enzymes within the uterus are able to partially degrade the acrosome, the cap surrounding the head of the spermatozoa, allowing it to bind with and eventually penetrate the zona pellucida of the egg. Which of the following minerals stabilizes sperm cell chromatin? A. Zinc. B. Manganese. C. Magnesium. D. Copper. The answer is A. Zinc. The stability of sperm cell chromatin is dependent on zinc. Zinc deficiency can cause sperm to be fragile, which in turn lowers sperm count and decreases male fertility. The average ejaculate contains how many sperm? A. 500 to 800 million. B. 700 to 900 million. C. 100 to 400 million. D. 40 to 600 million. The answer is D. 40 to 600 million. What is the main source of energy for sperm cells in ejaculate? A. Starch. B. Fructose. C. Sucrose. D. Galactose. The answer is B. Fructose. The primary energy source of spermatozoa is fructose, produced by the seminal vesicle along with multiple amino acids, vitamin C, enzymes, and flavin. Where are mature spermatozoa stored before ejaculation? A. In the vas deferens. B. In the seminal vesicles. C. In the epididymis. D. In the seminiferous tubules. The answer is C. In the epididymis. Fully formed spermatozoa from the seminal vesicles are transported to the epididymis, where they are stored for 2 to 3 months. During ejaculation, Stored sperm are moved from the lower epididymis via peristaltic action of the muscle layers of the vas deferens, mixed with various fluids to form semen. Which of the following structures produces the fluids that combine with sperm to form semen? A. The seminal vesicles. B. The bulbourethral gland. C. The prostate. D. All of these are correct. The answer is D. All of these are correct. Seminal fluid is formed by several glands. The prostate contributes proteolytic enzymes, citric acid, acid phosphatase, zinc, fibrinolysin, and prostate-specific antigen. The seminal vesicles contribute various flavins, fructose, and amino acids. The bulbourethral glands secrete a mucus that allows the semen to travel rapidly through the urethra, potentially aiding its route toward the cervix. What is the reproductive function of the prostate? A. Production of fructose. B. Lubrication of the urethra. C. Aids in sperm production. D. Alkalinization of the semen. The answer is D. Alkalinization of the semen. The prostate, a fleshy endocrine gland inferior to the outlet of the male bladder, secretes a slightly alkaline milky fluid that makes up 1/3 of the volume of semen. This alkalinity helps neutralize the acid environment of the vagina, increasing the likelihood of conception. Lubrication of the urethra is provided by the bulbourethral gland, while fructose is produced within the seminal vesicles. The prostate does not take part in sperm production. Which of the following cavernous bodies in the penis contains the urethra? A. The corpus cavernosum. B. The corpus spongiosum. C. The epididymis. D. The vas deferens. The answer is B. The corpus spongiosum. The urethra travels through the corpus spongiosum, one of 3 cavernous bodies in the human penis. The other 2 cavernous bodies are a set of sponge-like erectile tissues called the corpus cavernosum. The vas deferens and epididymis are both part of the storage and transportation of semen. The vas deferens joins with the urethra in the penis to facilitate ejaculation. What nerve carries sensory information from the external genitalia? A. The inferior gluteal nerve. B. The pudendal nerve. C. The posterior femoral cutaneous nerve. D. The superior gluteal nerve. The answer is B. The pudendal nerve. The pudendal nerve transmits sensation from the external genitalia, the skin around the anus, and the perineum. It also provides motor function to several important structures in the area, including musculature of the pelvic floor, the external urethral sphincter, and the external anal sphincter. The other nerves listed do not provide any sensory or motor innervation to the genitals. Which of these lists the correct sequence of spermatogenesis? A. Spermatogonia undergo mitosis to become primary spermatids, which undergo meiosis I to become primary spermatocytes, which undergo meiosis II to become secondary spermatocytes, which subdivide to form spermatozoa. B. Spermatogonia undergo mitosis to become primary spermatocytes, which undergo meiosis I to become secondary spermatocytes, which undergo meiosis II to become spermatids, which subdivide to form spermatozoa. C. Spermatogonia undergo meiosis I to become primary spermatocytes, which undergo meiosis II to become secondary spermatocytes, which undergo mitosis to become spermatids, which subdivide to form spermatozoa. D. Spermatids undergo meiosis I to become primary spermatocytes, which undergo meiosis II to become secondary spermatocytes, which undergo mitosis to become spermatogonia, which subdivide to form tertiary spermatocytes. The answer is B. Spermatogonia undergo mitosis to become primary spermatocytes, which undergo meiosis I to become secondary spermatocytes, which undergo meiosis II to become spermatids, which subdivide to form spermatozoa. Sperm development begins with spermatogonia, undifferentiated male germ cell of the seminiferous tubules. During spermatogenesis, these cells first divide via mitosis to form two primary spermatocytes. Those cells then divide meiotically to form two secondary spermatocytes, which then undergo meiosis II to become spermatids. Spermatids then mature further to form spermatozoa via the process of spermiogenesis. Which of the following terms refers the process by which spermatids mature into motile sperm? A. Spermiogenesis. B. Meiosis II. C. Spermatogenesis. D. Meiosis I. The answer is A. Spermiogenesis. The process by which spermatids mature into motile spermatozoa is called spermiogenesis. It is the final stage of spermatogenesis. During spermiogenesis, a polarity develops within the cell, which defines the cell as having a head end and a tail end. An acrosmal cap is formed over the head of the sperm, and a tail is formed via the elongation of a centriole within the cell. What is the name for the cap-like structure that covers the head of mature spermatozoa? A. The acrosome. B. The Golgi cap. C. The zona pellucida. D. The acrogolgi sheath. The answer is A. The acrosome. The cap that forms over the head and anterior tail of the spermatozoa is known as the acrosome. It is derived from the Golgi apparatus, an organelle within the sperm cell. The acrosome prevents premature fertilization of the egg outside of the uterus. Within the uterus there are several proteolytic and glycosidic enzymes that begin to break down the acrosome, rendering it capable of fertilization. When the sperm meets the egg, the acrosome is then able to bind to the egg's zona pellucida, which triggers further breakdown of the acrosome, known as the acrosome reaction. This further breakdown releases enzymes held within the acrosome that allow the sperm to penetrate the zona pellucida, allowing conception to occur. A fetus that is in the head-down position before delivery is said to have which of the following presentations? A. Breech. B. Transverse. C. Cephalic. D. Caudal. The answer is C. Cephalic. A fetus that assumes a head-down position during labor is said to have a cephalic presentation. The infant may still be oriented in a number of directions, such as vertex position, with the occiput anterior and the face and front of the body toward the mother's spine, face presentation with the head tilted back into full neck extension, or occipito-posterior, in which the occiput is against the sacrum. In a transverse presentation, the fetus is sidelong, while a breech presentation the fetus head is superior while the legs are inferior. Which of the following terms is used for an individual who is or has delivered or is about to deliver their first child? A. Nulliparous. B. Primiparous. C. Grand multiparous. D. Multiparous. The answer is B. Primiparous. Nulliparous, never delivered a child or carried a pregnancy past 20 weeks. Primiparous, has given birth once or is about to give birth for the first time. Multiparous, has given birth twice. Grand multiparous, has given birth 3 or more times. Which of the following hormones stimulates uterine contractions? A. Estrogen. B. Oxytocin. C. Progesterone. D. Prolactin. The answer is B. Oxytocin. Contractions in labor are stimulated by oxytocin, a non-peptide hormone produced in the hypothalamus and stored in the posterior pituitary. Oxytocin also triggers postpartum contractions in order to compress the lax uterine wall and reduce postpartum bleeding. Prolactin is a hormone essential to breast milk production, while estrogen and progesterone have a multitude of roles in both fetal and placental development. Which of the following is not a role of oxytocin? A. It triggers uterine contractions during labor. B. It stimulates contentment and pleasure in social relationships. C. It is involved in wound healing. D. Increases appetite. The answer is D. Increases appetite. Oxytocin, a non-apoptide hormone produced in the hypothalamus, has a variety of physiological roles. It increases trust, generosity, and other markers of social cohesion. In intimate relationships, it increases feelings of affection, love, sexual arousal, and contentment. It is an important hormone in labor, as it triggers contractions both during labor and postpartum in order to reduce bleeding and uterine size after delivery. It also acts as an immune modulator in wound healing. It does not, however, increase appetite. Studies have shown it to have the opposite effect, acting as an appetite suppressant in human and animal models. Which of the following terms describes the thinning and shortening of the cervix that occurs during labor? A. Transition. B. Bloody show. C. Dilation. D. Effacement. The answer is D. Effacement. During the later stages of labor, the cervix, normally a 4 cm long muscular sphincter, releases its mucus plug, then thins and shortens. The release of the mucus plug is termed the bloody show, and the thinning and shortening of the cervix is called effacement. Cervical effacement is almost always accompanied by cervical dilation, or a widening of the os in order to allow passage of the fetus. This all happens in the transition phase of labor. At what point during labor is the cervix considered to be fully dilated? A. 11 cm. B. 8 cm. C. 9 cm. D. 10 cm. The answer is D. 10 cm. The cervix is considered to be fully dilated at 10 cm. This suggests the transition phase of active labor, in which the individual is instructed to bear down, push, in order to facilitate delivery. How does blood plasma volume change over the course of a normal pregnancy? A. Increases by 50%. B. Increases by 25%. C. Decreases by 10%. D. Decreases by 25%. The answer is A. Increases by 50%. During a normal pregnancy, the volume of blood plasma increases by 50%. The erythrocyte count also increases, by as much as 30%. This may cause the hematocrit to appear lower than normal, due to dilution by the relatively larger increase in plasma. What hormone is responsible for triggering nausea and vomiting of pregnancy, morning sickness? A. Dehydroepiandrosterone, DHEA. B. Corticotropin-releasing hormone, CRH. C. Aldosterone. D. Human chorionic gonadotropin, HCG. The answer is D. Human chorionic gonadotropin, HCG. While research is still being conducted to determine the cause of nausea and vomiting of pregnancy, it generally correlates with the surge in human chorionic gonadotropin, HCG, that occurs in the first trimester. Estrogen may be another contributing hormone. Aldosterone, DHEA, and corticotropin-releasing hormone, CRH, have no apparent involvement. Most at-home or in-office pregnancy tests detect what hormone? A. Estrogen. B. Progesterone. C. Prolactin. D. Human chorionic gonadotropin, HCG. The answer is D. Human chorionic gonadotropin, HCG. Most pregnancy tests detect HCG, a hormone produced by the embryo that is detectable shortly after implantation, 10 to 14 days after fertilization. The function of hormone is to mimic the effects of luteinizing hormone, ultimately preserving the corpus luteum, which secretes progesterone. The progesterone maintains and vascularizes the uterus, making it a more favorable environment for the implanted embryo. A nurse is educating a group of young females about the physiology of fetal development. The nurse explains the stages of how a young fetus over time will develop and what special events take place over time. Which of the following events is correctly paired in regards to expected fetal development? A. 8 weeks, sex of the child is recognizable. B. 10 weeks, lanigo grows. C. 12 weeks, quickening occurs. D. 15 weeks, the eyes are open. E. 20 weeks, heartbeat first heard with a stethoscope. The answer is E. 20 weeks, heartbeat first heard with a stethoscope. The time frame correctly matched is at 20 weeks. The heartbeat is heard with a stethoscope, although it may be heard with ultrasound as early as 10 to 12 weeks. Quickening usually occurs around 20 weeks as well. The eyes open later between 24 to 27 weeks, lanigo first appears between 13 to 16 weeks, and the sex is recognizable around 12 weeks. At what embryonic age does the neural tube form? A. 5th week. B. 6th week. C. 3rd week. D. 4th week. The answer is D. 4th week. The neural tube forms from the neural plate during the 4th week of embryonic development, which is often before the mother knows of the pregnancy. Which of the following is a term for a substance that has been known to cause birth defects? A. Teratogen. B. Carcinogen. C. Mutagen. D. Pyrogens. The answer is A. Teratogen. A teratogen is a substance that has been known to cause birth defects. Some teratogens include alcohol, tobacco, phenytoin, rubella virus, and tetracycline. Carcinogens are a subclass of mutagens which have been known to cause cancer-inducing mutations. Mutagens cause mutations in cellular DNA expression, which may or may not lead to cancer or any other pathological condition, and pyrogens are substances that cause fever. The process by which an embryo develops from a single-celled zygote into a complex organism with many cell and tissue types is called A. Translation. B. Evolution. C. Differentiation. D. Transcription. The answer is C. Differentiation. The term for the development of specialized cell types is differentiation. This is a process by which pluripotent embryonic stem cells, all of which have the same genome, are methylated in various ways to turn off certain genes and leave other genes exposed for transcription. This allows cells to develop the specific features that they will require to perform their function as heart cells, neurons, etc. At what point in a pregnancy is miscarriage most likely to occur? A. The third trimester. B. The second trimester. C. Miscarriage is equally likely the first or second trimester. D. The first trimester. The answer is D. The first trimester. Over 85% of miscarriages occur in the first trimester. Less than 10% of miscarriages occur in the second trimester, and miscarriage in the third trimester is very rare and generally considered to be stillbirth or preterm delivery that result in loss of the baby due to complications, most often respiratory or digestive underdevelopment. Which of the following hormones, if insufficient, would be the most likely to cause early first trimester miscarriage of a healthy embryo? A. Aldosterone. B. Estrogen. C. Progesterone. D. Cortisol. The answer is C. Progesterone. While all of the hormones listed are important for development of a healthy embryo, the most important hormone for preventing early first trimester miscarriage is progesterone. This hormone is generally secreted by the corpus luteum in sufficient quantities to prevent the shedding of the endometrial lining after implantation. When progesterone is insufficient, the endometrium can be shed as in a regular menstrual period, resulting in loss of the pregnancy. In most cases this type of miscarriage can be easily prevented by supplementation with vaginal progesterone suppositories. The endoderm forms which of the following tissue types? A. Epithelial linings, several endocrine organs, the bladder, and the respiratory tract. B. The liver and pancreas, the adrenal glands, and the kidneys. C. The endoderm forms all of these tissue types. D. The respiratory tract, the pancreas, and the nervous system. The answer is A. Epithelial linings, several endocrine organs, the bladder, and the respiratory tract. The endoderm is the deepest, most proximal, germ layer of a developing embryo. It forms several endocrine glands including the pancreas, the thyroid, and the thymus. The adrenal glands and kidneys, however, are derived from the mesoderm. It also forms the bladder and ureters, the respiratory tract, and the epithelial linings of the GI tract and auditory system. The nervous system is derived from the ectoderm. Defects in the formation of what embryonic structure can result in spina bifida, anencephaly, or cleft lip or palate? A. The bulbus cordis. B. The neural tube. C. The cloaca. D. The archenteron. The answer is B. The neural tube. Defects in the closure of the neural tube, a rudimentary precursor to the nervous system, can result in several serious conditions. Of these the most common are spina bifida and anencephaly. Cleft lip and cleft palate are also common defects of neural tube development. Defects in the cloaca and archenteron would affect gastrointestinal development, while the bulbus cordis is a part of the developing cardiovascular system. At what gestational age can the fetal heartbeat be detected? A. Week 10. B. Week 8. C. Week 5. D. Week 7. The answer is C. Week 5. The fetal heartbeat is generally first detected at 5 weeks. This can be monitored by ultrasound and auscultated. Fetal heartbeat is an important aspect of assuring fetal health through pregnancy. The formation of the yolk sac happens at what week of embryonic development? A. Week 3. B. Week 4. C. Week 2. D. Week 1. The answer is B. Week 4. The yolk sac is a membranous sac that provides nutrients to a developing embryo. It is generally visible via ultrasound by the 4th week of gestation. Which of the following is not one of the three basic germ layers formed during embryonic development? A. Endoderm. B. Ectoderm. C. Mesoderm. D. Trophoderm. The answer is D. Trophoderm. The three germ layers formed during embryonic development are the endoderm, the mesoderm, and the ectoderm. The trophoderm is not a germ layer, it is the membrane that forms the wall of the blastocyst in early embryonic development. Which of the following tissue types is derived from the ectoderm? A. Teeth. B. Skin, hair, and nails. C. Nervous tissue. D. All of these are correct. The answer is D. All of these are correct. The ectoderm is the outermost germ layer of a developing fetus. It forms the nervous system, teeth, skin, hair, nails, sweat glands, mouth, and anus. Which of the following tissue types is not derived from the mesoderm? A. Red blood cells. B. Thyroid. C. Muscle cells. D. Pericardium. The answer is B. Thyroid. The mesoderm forms skeletal muscle, cardiac muscle, smooth muscle, connective tissue, the pericardium, in addition to several other membranous sacs such as the peritoneum, and red blood cells. It also gives rise to cartilage and bone, the dura mater, the kidneys, and the adrenal glands. The thyroid is derived from the endoderm. Which of the following medications is known to have teratogenic effects? A. Warfarin. B. ACE inhibitors. C. Isotretinoin. D. All of these. The answer is D. All of these. Multiple forms and classes of medication have been shown to cause birth defects. These include ACE inhibitors, antiepileptics such as phenytoin and valproic acid, isotretinoin and other forms of high-dose vitamin A, and blood thinners such as warfarin, among others. Fertilization generally occurs in what location? A. The distal two-thirds of the fallopian tube. B. In the fundus of the uterus. C. In the femur. D. In the body of the uterus. The answer is A. The distal two-thirds of the fallopian tube. Fertilization happens in the fallopian tube, most frequently in the distal two-thirds of the tube. Dash is the fetal structure that allows approximately 20 to 30% of blood to bypass the liver and flow from the umbilical vein to the vena cava. A. The ductus venosus. B. The foramen ovale. C. The umbilical vein. D. The ductus arteriosus. The answer is A. The ductus venosus. The ductus venosus is a small shunt that allows a portion of fetal blood to bypass the liver and flow from the umbilical vein to the vena cava. This allows more oxygenated blood to be available for the developing fetal brain. The ductus arteriosus and foramen ovale are both fetal cardiac shunts. The placenta secretes all of the following hormones except Dash. A. Aldosterone. B. Human chorionic gonadotropin, HCG. C. Human placenta lactogen, HPL. D. Estrogen. The answer is A. Aldosterone. The human placenta secretes estrogen, progesterone, human chorionic gonadotropin, HCG, and human placenta lactogen, HPL. Aldosterone is produced by the adrenal gland. The initial single-celled fertilized egg is known as the _ A. Embryo. B. Zygote. C. Blastocyst. D. Morula. The answer is B. Zygote. A zygote is a karyotic cell formed by the joining of two gametes, sperm and egg. The zygote then goes on to divide several times till it forms a small clump of cells termed a morula. The next stage is the formation of a blastocyst, which is the final stage before development into an embryo. An embryo implants days after ovulation. A. 7 to 10. B. 5 to 7. C. 10 to 12. D. 1 to 5. The answer is A. 7 to 10. The zygote has developed into an embryo and reached the uterus by day 5 and will generally implant on day 7 to 10 after ovulation. The majority of first trimester miscarriages are due to dash. A. Lifting heavy objects. B. Chromosome abnormalities. C. Exercise. D. None of these. The answer is B. Chromosome abnormalities. The most common cause of first trimester miscarriage is chromosome abnormalities. These can occur in as many as 1 in 4 pregnancies, and cause the developing embryo issues that are not compatible with life. Lifting heavy objects and exercise are not generally responsible for triggering miscarriage, though they could potentially trigger a miscarriage in individuals with underlying conditions or other risk factors. What organelle is considered to be the powerhouse of the cell, due to its role in production of ATP? A. Mitochondria. B. The nucleus. C. The Golgi apparatus. D. The rough endoplasmic reticulum. The answer is A. Mitochondria. Mitochondria are often called the powerhouse of the cell because they produce ATP, the body's most basic unit of energy. The nucleus houses the cell's DNA, the rough endoplasmic reticulum is the site of cellular protein manufacturing, and the Golgi apparatus packages protein manufactured in the cell for release and transport to the rest of the body. Which of the following is not a function of the cell membrane? A. Anchors the cytoskeleton to hold the shape of the cell. B. Synthesize proteins. C. Regulates passage of substances into and out of the cell. D. Attaches to the extracellular matrix and other cells to create tissues. The answer is B. Synthesize proteins. The cell membrane has many purposes. It anchors the cytoskeleton to give the cell shape and structure. It houses proteins that both interact with signaling molecules from outside the cell and communicate with secondary messengers within the cell. It facilitates the absorption and release of electrolytes, water, and vesicles carrying proteins or other molecules. It forms junctions with other cells and connects the cell to the extracellular matrix. One thing the cell membrane does not do, however, is act as a site of protein synthesis. That occurs primarily in the rough endoplasmic reticulum or on ribosomes in the cytoplasm. Which organelle is responsible for synthesis of lipids within the cell? A. The nucleus. B. The Golgi apparatus. C. The smooth endoplasmic reticulum, SER. D. The mitochondria. The answer is C. The smooth endoplasmic reticulum, SER. The majority of lipid production within the cell occurs within the smooth endoplasmic reticulum. It is also the site of production of steroids and phospholipids. The Golgi apparatus is responsible for packaging of cell products for transport outside of the cell. The mitochondria produce ATP, and the nucleus houses the DNA. Which of the following organelles is responsible for cellular respiration? A. The centrioles. B. The mitochondria. C. The peroxisomes. D. The ribosomes. The answer is B. The mitochondria. Aerobic cellular respiration occurs exclusively in the mitochondria. These organelles are present in greater number in cells that require a large supply of ATP, such as striated muscle cells, liver cells, and sperm cells. The dash makes up the structural framework of the cell. A. Cytoplasm. B. Rough endoplasmic reticulum. C. Nucleolus. D. Cytoskeleton. The answer is D. Cytoskeleton. The framework of the cell is made up by the cytoskeleton. The cytoskeleton gives the cell both shape and structure, and allows the cell to attach to extracellular connective tissue in order to form tissue types. There are three major fibers that make up cytoskeleton: microfilaments, actin, intermediate filaments, and microtubules. What role does cholesterol play in the cell membrane? A. Detoxification. B. Energy production. C. Fluidity and stabilization of phospholipids. D. Production of steroids. The answer is C. Fluidity and stabilization of phospholipids. Cholesterol is a vital component of the cellular membrane. It maintains both the fluidity and structural integrity of the cell. While cholesterol is an integral component of steroid production, this occurs outside of the cell membrane. Cholesterol does not play a significant role in cellular energy production or cell membrane detoxification. All of the cells of the human body except sex cells and undifferentiated stem cells are termed dash cells. A. Somatic. B. Gamete. C. Eukaryotic. D. Chromatic. The answer is A. Somatic. All of the cells of the human body except sex cells are termed somatic cells. These are diploid cells, meaning that they contain two homologous copies of each chromosome. Sex cells, eggs and sperm, are haploid cells, containing just one set of chromosomes in each cell. All human cells are eukaryotic, because they contain a nucleus and organelles within a cellular membrane. Which of the following organelles is responsible for protein synthesis? A. Lysosomes. B. Ribosomes. C. The nucleus. D. The smooth endoplasmic reticulum. The answer is B. Ribosomes. While the nucleus houses the DNA and plays an integral role in the transcription of genetic code in order to produce specific proteins, actual protein synthesis is carried out by the ribosomes. These organelles consist of two subunits and are either independent in the cytoplasm of the cell or housed in the rough endoplasmic reticulum. Note that ribosomes can be in the cytoplasm or on the endoplasmic reticulum, hence making it rough. A hypertonic IV would cause some amount of dash of red blood cells as water moved out of the cell across the osmotic gradient. A. Lysing. B. Crenation. C. A hypertonic IV would not affect blood cells. D. Saturation. The answer is B. Crenation. A hypertonic solution, or one which contains solutes in higher concentration than blood cells, would cause water to leave the red blood cell across the osmotic gradient. This causes a reversible crumpling or shriveling of the cell, termed crenation. A cell in a hypotonic solution, wherein the cell itself contained a higher level of solutes than the fluid, would take on water, potentially causing the cell to lyse, burst. Ribosomal subunits are manufactured by what organelle? A. Smooth endoplasmic reticulum, SER. B. Nucleus. C. Nucleolus. D. Rough endoplasmic reticulum, RER. The answer is C. Nucleolus. Ribosomal subunits are manufactured by the nucleolus, which is contained within the nucleus. Its primary function is the production and assembly of ribosome subunits. The RER houses ribosomes for protein manufacture. The SER does not take part in ribosome production or functioning. Note that ribosomes are composed of RNA and protein. Proteins are translated on ribosomes in the cytoplasm. A human cell spends 90% of its lifetime in which phase of the cell cycle? A. Cytokinesis. B. Gap 1. C. Interphase. D. Mitotic phase. The answer is C. Interphase. 90% of the cell cycle is spent in interphase. This time is also termed the resting phase as it is absorbing nutrients and replicating cellular elements in preparation for cell division. This phase includes the stages Gap 1 and Gap 2. Mitosis and cytokinesis, the final stages in cell division, are both relatively short compared to interphase, accounting for approximately 10% of the cell cycle. The chemotherapeutic agent vinblastine interferes with the assembly of microtubules. This is effective in the treatment of certain cancers due to what cellular effect? A. Inhibition of mitochondrial function. B. Disruption of the formation of mitotic spindles. C. Inhibition of DNA synthesis. D. Destabilization of cellular membranes. The answer is B. Disruption of the formation of mitotic spindles. Vinblastine and similar chemotherapeutic agents function by disrupting the formation and stability of microtubules in the cell. Because cell division is dependent on microtubule function, loss of microtubule integrity targets rapidly reproducing cells such as cancer cells. A solution is said to be dash when it contains a lower solute concentration than the cell. A. Hypotonic. B. Nontonic. C. Hypertonic. D. Isotonic. The answer is A. Hypotonic. A hypertonic solution is one that contains solutes at a lower concentration than the cell. A cell, such as a red blood cell, will swell when exposed to a hypertonic solution as water moves into the cell to balance the osmotic gradient. Which vitamins are necessary to convert glutamic acid into glutamine? A. Vitamin E and vitamin D. B. Vitamin C and vitamin B12. C. Vitamin B3 and vitamin B6. D. Biotin and folate. The answer is C. Vitamin B3 and vitamin B6. Vitamin B3 and vitamin B6 are required to convert glutamic acid into glutamine. Biotin, vitamin B7, plays roles in fat and amino acid metabolism, and though there has been no conclusive evidence of its effect on the growth of hair and nails, it is commonly taken as a supplement for these purposes. Folate, vitamin B9, is required during synthesis of red blood cells, and during DNA replication. Folate cannot be synthesized in ovo, and thus must be ingested from the diet. Vitamin C is a powerful antioxidant, and is a cofactor to many biological processes. Cobalamin, vitamin B12, is involved in cell metabolism, particularly in that of fatty acids and amino acids. The source of B12 is from the natural flora of the gut. Vitamin D enhances the absorption of minerals such as calcium, magnesium, and zinc from the gastrointestinal tract. Vitamin E is a fat-soluble antioxidant. What B vitamin deficiency is common in alcoholism? A. Folate. B. Riboflavin, B2. C. Biotin. D. Thiamine, B1. The answer is D. Thiamine, B1. Alcoholism is associated with thiamine, vitamin B1, deficiency. This is due to multiple factors: poor nutrition, ethanol's inhibition of thiamine transport in the intestine, and reduced storage of thiamine in the liver due to fatty changes. What essential amino acid is a precursor to nitric oxide? A. Leucine. B. Methionine. C. L-arginine. D. Histidine. The answer is C. L-arginine. L-arginine is a precursor for the production of nitric oxide, essential to vasodilation. Other precursors to nitric oxide include NADPH, oxygen, and nitric oxide synthetase, NOS, enzymes. These other amino acids do not have essential roles in the nitric oxide synthesis pathway. A physician might recommend decreased fluid intake for which of the following conditions? A. Vomiting. B. Renal disease. C. Pressure ulcer. D. Nasogastric tube. The answer is B. Renal disease. A physician is most likely to recommend decreased fluid intake in a patient that has renal disease, particularly if they are in any stage of renal failure. This is because a high fluid intake may put undue strain on the already impaired function of the kidney. Increased fluid intake is generally recommended for all of the other conditions listed. What is the most common cause of copper deficiency in the U.S.? A. Soil mineral depletion. B. Inadequate dietary intake. C. Wilson's disease. D. Gastric bypass. The answer is D. Gastric bypass. The most common cause of copper deficiency in the United States is gastric bypass. This is due to malabsorption from food. Copper is fairly ubiquitous in soil and in the average American diet. Wilson's disease is a disorder of excess copper, rather than copper deficiency, resulting in a variety of neurological symptoms. Which of the following is a symptom of vitamin K deficiency? A. Bone malformation. B. Petechiae. C. Cartilage calcification. D. All of these. The answer is D. All of these. Vitamin K deficiency can cause a variety of issues related to inability to form blood clots such as petechiae, excessive bleeding, bruising, heavy menses. This vitamin is also an important part of bone and cartilage formation, with deficiency resulting in malformation of developing bones and cartilage, or deposition of calcium into cartilage or arterial walls. Which of the following spices was shown in several studies to lower blood sugar in type 2 diabetics by decreasing insulin resistance? A. Turmeric. B. Cumin. C. Cinnamon. D. Oregano. The answer is C. Cinnamon. An intake of 1 to 6 grams of cinnamon has been shown in studies to lower blood sugar in patients with type 2 diabetes by as much as 25%, possibly due to its ability to improve insulin sensitivity. Which of the following is the most common cause of osteomalacia? A. Biotin deficiency. B. Vitamin K deficiency. C. Vitamin E deficiency. D. Vitamin D deficiency. The answer is D. All of these. Vitamin K deficiency can cause a variety of issues related to inability to form blood clots such as petechiae, excessive bleeding, bruising, heavy menses. This vitamin is also an important part of bone and cartilage formation, with deficiency resulting in malformation of developing bones and cartilage, or deposition of calcium into cartilage or arterial walls. Which of the following nutrients, when consumed at the same time as a meal that contains non-Hem iron, iron from plant sources such as spinach, can significantly improve iron absorption? A. Calcium. B. Vitamin C. C. Vitamin D. D. Magnesium. The answer is B. Vitamin C. Vitamin C chelates non-Hem iron in food while exposed to the acidic pH of the stomach. This chelated iron then becomes more soluble in the alkaline pH of the duodenum, resulting in increased intestinal absorption of iron.